Chris, it's never like this.
No,
I'm sorry. It's really
problem.
unusually
Yeah.
long. It's not, I've never had it take this long.
I mean, you're very clear on my end, so I hope, and I bet there's nobody at work, so I think our internet's pretty good on this end. We're discouraged from coming, so.
They don't like you to come to the office, huh?
No.
Okay.
Well, right now. For the.
We're getting warm. Another few seconds will do it, I think.
On my screen, it says recording live on YouTube.
It's a good sign, but I have to still check one more thing before I assume anything, because otherwise we'll get an echo, I think. I said a few seconds and look what's happening.
It's okay.
Hello? Yeah, I've got a problem. I mean, I'm almost getting there, but it's just slow loading even Zoom now. But I'm almost ready. So yeah, he's fine. He's here, but he's waiting for me. It's the Zoom problem. Yeah, I mean, it's Zoom has been fine until today. Now even Zoom is, it's been 10 minutes now that I've been trying to get Zoom going live, and there's a pinwheel going on the window. So I think I told him 2 minutes ago that it was just a few seconds and I'd be ready. I know it is, but I mean, we've got to solve it. I can't, I mean, it's just getting worse. I mean, this is the first time Zoom's been affected, but it's not even picking it up. I have the window and it tells him that we're live, but my window is not showing. It's one of those circles going around in circles. So I can only wait. It's now 12:41 and I don't know what more to do except just wait for it to. It just seems to be trying to load, like there's a thermometer and all that, and the thermometer's popping up and everything's happening, but it's been 10 minutes. Here. Okay, we're ready. All right. If I can get this to mute. Yeah, okay, bye. Okay, we're ready.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Metta Spencer. You folks want to go to Saskatchewan today? It'll be your outing for the day. We're going to go talk about peace education with a fellow in Saskatchewan. There's a professor of peace education and other things. He's at is it St. Thomas More College?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Okay.
That's right.
This is Christopher Franco. And he's a professor at a Catholic college at the University of Saskatchewan in where? Regina?
Saskatoon.
Saskatoon. All right. See, I've never been to your university. Sorry about that.
Oh, no.
I'm sure it's a center of intellectual ferment. So today we're going to talk about a new thing. Good morning, Christopher. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. And I hear you're the head of a new outfit, right?
Yeah.
You're now a top dog in a big hierarchy or something, right? An academic institution of some kind, which I don't know the first thing about, except you have a new peace studies or global studies organization in Saskatchewan that we all need to learn about. Is that right?
Sure. So I guess what you're talking about is that we started at the college, we started a center, and it's a center called the Center for Faith, Reason, Peace, and Justice. And
Faith, let me get this.
Yeah.
Faith, reason, peace, and justice. So it's interesting that you stick reason in there.
Yeah.
Who invented that little innovation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons for that. So if I just tell you quickly what the center does, and then we'll come back to your question, it'll make more sense, I think. So what the center does is it houses the academic programming, our distinctive area academic programming in Catholic studies, in peace studies, and in social justice and the common good. Now, it's not just the academic programming, it's also the community outreach in those areas. So we were debating, my personal preference actually initially was to have it called the Center for Faith. They wanted faith, and to just have it for faith, peace, and justice. But folks were worried that it would sound dogmatic. And then also in Catholic intellectual traditions, we talk quite a bit about faith and reason. So that's why we included that extra phrase. And it is a bit cumbersome to have those four, usually centers have 2 or 3 aspects in the title. But we're hoping to get a transformative gift one day and just be able to call it after the person, whoever gives the gift.
Oh yeah, you get some big donor maybe.
Yeah.
They have their names on things. Okay, as long as you pick a good donor. Okay, well, so tell me about this outfit. It's you got to tell me a little bit more about your university. Let's work our way down from
Sure.
the university level to the college level, where you've already been, I guess, several years teaching. I don't know what you do, except I know it has something to do with peace.
Yeah.
Because you keep showing up on other peace organizations like the Canadian Peace Research Association, and which you're the something of. What are you of there?
I am, for my sins, the vice president of the Canadian Peace Research Association.
Vice president. Oh, that's a lot better than being president, I'll tell you. I've been both.
Yeah. Well, Erica is a
always
very
want to
good
pick
president.
vice if you can, because a lot less work. But maybe Erica is pushing some stuff off onto you. I don't know. Anyway, good for you. Good for you. Okay, so you've been at the University of Saskatchewan a while, and you're in Saskatoon. I'm not sure I've ever been in Saskatoon.
Yeah,
I
so
drove
I've been
to Canada once. I can't remember what I saw.
You probably remember the university. It's a very beautiful campus.
Is it?
Yep. With limestone buildings, etc. Pride of the province. Yep. Beautiful campus.
I'm sure I didn't see it.
Yep.
Anyway, good. Okay, so and then within the university, there are various colleges, and one of them is your college, St. Thomas More. That is a famous name, but I can't remember who he was or what he did. He's not the guy who got martyred, was he?
Yeah, I guess from a religious perspective, he got martyred first. The story would be for standing up to Henry VIII on principles of conscience. He's the patron saint of lawyers. Tell me
the story, because is this the one where the king says, "Will somebody rid me of this priest?" And somebody did. They took him seriously.
Yeah, that's the same time. So this
guy?
No, this guy was the chancellor. Sir Thomas More was the chancellor of England, and so basically Henry VIII's high legal official, and he refused to participate in the activities for Henry VIII's first divorce. Yeah.
Okay, so he's not a saint; he's a sir.
Well, he was a sir, and now he's also.
He became both. Oh, that's unusual, isn't it? Sirs becoming.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, he's perhaps a problematic saint because being chancellor under Henry VIII, I'm sure he sullied his hands on a number of occasions. But on this particular occasion, he didn't. He stood for conscience and was put in the Tower. of London and eventually executed. So yeah, that's his story. I don't know too much about it.
Now, there was something about one of the kings said, will somebody rid me of this troublesome priest?
Yeah.
And somebody did. And he said, oh, I didn't really mean it. What'd you do that for? Uh-oh. Is that the same story?
Around the same time, I think that's the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, maybe, who was. We could look that up. I would have prepared if I had known you wanted to.
Well, you don't expect these things. You come to this program and you never know what's going to come up, because I'm not quite sure what's going to flip.
So I know it's referring from my history that I took when I was an undergraduate. I know it's referring back to an Archbishop of Canterbury that was causing trouble, and
but I know that whoever he was supposed to get rid of was a priest already. So this Sir guy wasn't already a priest, was he?
No, so Thomas More was a layperson. He had famous for one of the things that they talk about quite a bit at the college is how he, even given the times, he wanted his daughters to be educated. So he was a very wealthy man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm getting these people confused. I'll look it up too. We'll have another conversation, talk about that. Okay, good. So you got this college, and you've been there how long?
I've been here 10 years now.
All right. And you run what there?
So I'm
running all along this program in peace studies, sort of.
Yeah. So what you're probably most interested in is we're working to develop the peace studies program. So we offered the first, I think we talked around the time we were offering the first peace studies class at the post-secondary level in Saskatchewan. So we've done that for a couple of years. And right now we're putting through a peace studies certificate. And we're hoping to get to the point where we can have a peace studies major. So we have now 2 core courses and a bunch of supporting courses.
Is that hard to get a major together?
It's at the University of Saskatchewan. We've taken the best of Oxford and Cambridge, and it's very hard, but we're doing it. We're making partnerships, trying to make it interdisciplinary with a core set of classes, and then drawing on folks in other departments who are teaching in different areas. So since I've been here, I've taught a class called Religions and Nonviolence, and that's one of the supporting classes. The political studies classes about peace building, etc. We've put into there, and then we have right now 2 core courses: the Introduction to Peace Studies and Peace Theory and Praxis. That will offer Peace Theory and Praxis will offer for the first time next year, and those would be very explicitly peace studies, interdisciplinary type perspective, and then drawing on other folks from other departments. We have options for the students for the certificate that's in the final stages of being approved and should be ready to go for next year. Fingers crossed.
Okay, well, you're going about this in the totally opposite way than what I did, because I created a peace and I will take credit for it because I really did do it. Organize a peace program at the University of Toronto's Mississauga campus. Now that would have been about 30 years ago now, and I ran it for I think 14 years before I retired. But what I did at the beginning was simply go around to all the different departments and make a list of all the courses that had to do with peace issues. Could be history, could philosophy, could be even psychology, political science. Political science didn't want to play, though. They are very proprietary. They tend to think that this is our domain and you guys are imposters because you think you know something that's really our specialty. So they wouldn't let me include any of their political science courses. But I got a whole package of these courses that were related. And then I put together the 2 coordinating the 2 basic courses that everybody had to have. Yeah. And I taught those, and then a course on development. And that was the way I got it. But so the masters, not the masters, the major came together right from the get-go. It was the first course we taught was for people who were going to take peace studies as a major. So yeah, I guess so. A different way of doing it, I guess.
But we're doing that same sort of thing by, so I contacted all the department heads, both at our college and at the university, asking about courses that might be suitable for the certificate. I went and met with people. My colleague Cynthia Wallace did when I was on sabbatical 2 years ago, did continued part of that work. So we've been very consultative. We have to have a committee to form a certificate that has representatives from our college and the university. Yeah, so it might not be that different. We just knew that this is what we wanted to do, so we started.
Yeah, but you've been teaching this core course for a while already, right?
Yeah, yeah.
See,
So
that I didn't do.
two cycles we've done it now, just finished.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. How many students do you think will take that as your major?
Oh, if we get to the point of the major, I mean, we hope and dream that there'll be, a good chunk. So in religion and culture, for instance, which I'm department head of, we have, right now we only have 12 majors. I think we can beat that with peace studies for sure. And then that would probably make our college happy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've always been quality over quantity, and they're very good students. I got to teach that first introduction to peace studies, and they were amazing students, and so many people were willing to help and come and guest lecture about their experiences, etc. It was a beautiful course to teach. Yeah.
Well, now, did they come to you? You sound as if you already have their formation already half done by the time they get to you, that they're already nice folks.
Yes.
I'm not sure that was the case for the people that I taught. I mean, not that they weren't nice folks, but they weren't already halfway socialized into peace thinking.
Mhm.
And I think they just took it like they might, well, I got a major in something. I guess it'll either be, physics or math or peace studies, So what the hell, let's go with peace. It was not that they were already half socialized at all. I was really taking people, it could have been anybody off the street in terms of their ideas. And I kind of think that was a good thing in a way for me to actually have to start talking with people at a very basic level of what, like, is peace better than war? Or, very fundamental questions that, in a way were naive questions, but it's, that's kind of where you need to start with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Now, who are the students who come to you? You already have found some, right?
Yeah, so we had some that are deeply committed to peace already, and we had some that were taking it because it was an option that advisors had said, oh, if you're looking for something, why not try this new thing? So I had that variety of experience, much like what, I used to be a high school teacher, and there's people that come in to math at different levels. I think something like that was going on with peace studies, not that it's a hierarchy in the same way. So I had, one student who'd of Mennonite tradition who'd been away doing peace building work, and I had another student, first year university, just thought it sounded like an interesting title that fit their schedule.
Yeah.
So there was a big range. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think they all got something out of it, and we tried to make sure, in best of peace study spirit, that we weren't being exclusionary in the way that we talked about peace, that any terms that we used, we defined, etc., as you would expect in an introductory class, and that people, those students that first came in, built up a vocabulary, sort of a peace talk vocabulary, I think, by the end. It was kind of I was pretty.
Well, I'm not sure that I know that there's a specialized peace vocabulary within peace studies. You mean Catholic peaceniks talk differently from Mennonite peaceniks? I guess they do.
Well, I actually tried it particularly because I taught that religion and nonviolence class. I tried to, and so I would say none of our students have to be Catholic, and most of them I don't think were. And I actually avoided religion in the first go round for intro peace studies on purpose, to make sure that it wasn't pigeonholed in that way.
Mhm.
Although I mean, I'm a Catholic peacenik myself, and I have been influenced by Mennonite peaceniks in your language. And those are important voices locally, especially the Mennonite voice on the prairies. So we certainly didn't want to exclude that. And we did have people from MCC, the Mennonite Central Committee, come in and guest lecture in the class. But I never explicitly taught about religion to show that there was that commonality in peace studies. particularly when you move towards the praxis, I think, where people, even if they have different motivations, can come together on peace issues, I think is a very important point.
Well, I remember talking early on, coming sort of the history of the development of theories of justice and peace,
Mhm.
and remembering how late in the history of Christianity the theory of just war came about. It wasn't the first. The patristics would not would not cover a study of the emergence of the theory of just war, as far as I know, would be.
Yeah, so actually, well, they would, but so
They would?
yeah, Augustine is often is considered a patristic by most scholars, and he articulated an initial articulation of just war theory. That's very important in Catholic circles because that's assumed to be the sort of normative position to approach issues of war and peace. Although obviously there's Catholics that are pushing that and have been for quite some time.
What was his distinctive formulation? What would Augustine have said on the subject? I can't, as far as I know, I've never read that myself, so I don't know that.
Yeah, so so we talk quite a bit of now, again, something I wasn't prepared to talk about today, but we talk quite a bit about the criteria for just war. And so he had that, I think he had the basic, again, something, if you asked me to, I would have prepared, but he had the basic idea of proportionality, last resort, such principles that are associated with just war. So I'm more familiar with the contemporary debate, say for instance, with nuclear weapons. And we talk now in Catholic circles, some folks talk about an idea of functional pacifism, where at least on nuclear weapons issue, because they can never be proportional, both just war theories and Catholic pacifists would come to the same conclusion that they're not licit, not valid. Yeah.
Not valid?
Yeah, so those are technical moral terms, but the idea that they're not permissible. Pope Francis recently said that they offer nothing but a false sense of security in nuclear weapons.
Oh yeah. Okay. Now again, I'm going to draw you afield from peace education, but that's certainly the news of the day. I mean, the news of the month or something, that somebody in the Vatican said you shouldn't go to war or you shouldn't use nuclear weapons. Right now, tell me what's going. Do you mind? Because I just heard that is kind of a newsworthy statement or policy. Is this some sort of change that's going on, or what's happening to guys in Rome,
Well, I mean, I wrote an article about this, so this I can tell you quite a bit about. I don't know how much you want to know.
A lot, actually. It's not a bad idea.
So you probably remember on Pugwash, Douglas Roach said that this was a new thing so this conference happened at the Vatican. I actually have a book on it that I'm supposed to review. But this conference happened at the Vatican, I'm going to say in 2017, 2018. And it was about the issue of, so there's been a long tradition about weapons of mass destruction and them being not permissible. But then this question of deterrence came up, and Pope Francis was very clear at that conference in saying that even you can't hold nuclear weapons even for the purposes of deterrence. They had always been thought of as something, since the nuclear age, they'd always been thought of as something that was not permissible. But John Paul II had made this small qualified room for deterrence. That peace through strength, mutually assured destruction that I'm sure you're familiar with. And Francis just made it very clear that that wasn't the position. Now, I wrote an article for the Journal of, I'm going to say, again, something I wasn't prepared to talk about, but the Journal of Nuclear and Disarmament, something like that, that's coming out of Japan. And I wrote before Pope Francis went to, and maybe this was also in the news because Pope Francis went to Hiroshima recently and talked about the survivors and their experience and how this was not the way to go to deploy nuclear weapons. And so prior to that, I had done an article about it. And I try to show that actually even deterrence was in papal teaching and Catholic social teaching, even deterrence was very marginal position. And, you know, it's true that Pope John Paul II opened a small window for it, but it was very, very qualified. Yeah.
Very, very qualified. Okay.
I can send you that article if you're interested.
Huh. Okay. Now, how does that compare? Because that would have, John Paul II would have been about the same time, if I'm not.
You're just fading out for me. I don't know. Meta, can you still hear me? Because I can't hear you.
Talk. Can you tell me?
Oh,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
No, you can now?
Yeah.
I must have touched a chord. There's sorry, I'll have to edit that out. Okay, that would have been maybe in the same vintage as the decision of the World Court, which was also a bit of an iffy kind of statement. Okay. It left a loophole that you could drive a truck through, if I'm not mistaken. Now, was there, how do those, have you ever done this before? I haven't thought about this, so we're winging this. Is there, how do these two doctrinal positions, the World Court and the Vatican, fit together during that period when they sort of made room for, okay, you can do it a little bit kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just I mean, I don't know about that particular connection, but I think it's that existential experience of the Cold War, and, you know, in the core nations, there's not conflict. So people associate that still with sort of a peace through strength thing. And I guess, you know, there's an argument, like positional argument, that John Paul II, being from Poland, etc., maybe had an openness to that. So if you ask Douglas Roche about this, he'll say that it was very, very important. And I respect him so much, and he's done so much, but he'll say it's very, very important that Pope Francis comes out and says even deterrence is not something that's acceptable, right? It's not valid and licit. So and a lot of and Drew Christensen, who's very important in the U.S., in the book that I'm meant to write this review of, says a similar thing, that this is breaking new ground, etc. Those types of metaphors he uses.
Joan, I don't know who this person is. June Christensen? Drew
Christensen, yeah. He's a Jesuit priest who's kind of very important in Catholic peace theory.
Spell his first name.
Drew, like D-R-E-W.
Oh, okay. I don't know who he is. Okay. Now, what difference do you think it will make in world affairs? Any? Or will it? Or let's say, okay, mediate it through public opinion. Yeah. If public opinion is swayed at all by Catholic doctrine, and I suppose it must be somewhat, but it clearly isn't all the time. Mm-hmm. What is that? How public policy might actually, you know, political decisions might be influenced by this, or do you expect there to be any kind of impact?
Well, I think it pushes like a lot of establishment Catholics to think in different ways. And there is a connection now in the contemporary period that I'm more familiar with, which is the Nuclear Ban Treaty, mm-hmm. which the first state to ratify it, because it's a medieval monarchy, actually, it was the Holy See, the Vatican City State was the first state to sign on to the treaty. So they have that ability. That's actually the occasion for the conference that Pope Francis addressed and talked about deterrence. Is they have the ability to move very, very fast on these things because they're a monarchy.
Yeah,
so they're the first signatory to the ban treaty. So
I didn't know that they were the first. That's symbolically lovely. Yeah.
And so it's, what do you do with these So it's a lot of it is, some people think of these, like the papal authority, as vestiges. But it's fascinating to think of, they have all these, they're a multinational organization with geographical representation across the world. They have access to UN processes that they can choose to participate in or not. They chose to fully participate in the case of the nuclear ban treaty. If that organization was fully, I almost said mobilized, but I need a more peaceful word, but fully activated, animated is probably the best word.
All right.
For peace, that's a very exciting possibility. There's 1 billion Catholics around the world, that geography that I talked about, and then also this access to formal political processes as having the Holy See, having their own state, even though it's a microstate, etc. So,
Okay.
I get very excited about the idea of the Catholic Church finding its way to becoming a peace church. That's something that's very exciting to me. And I think that there's a transition that's going on. They've always been and this is part of the tension that you're talking about, they've always been very strong on the rhetorical level in their teachings about peace and justice. It's getting better, I think, the way that it's articulated, because they're being more consultative in the way that the popes draft these statements, for example, and the bishops draft these statements in Catholic social teaching.
No, wait a minute, slow down. There's the way they draft something is going to influence the impact.
Yeah, so instead of just consulting with, say, a few folks in the Vatican City State that are working for the Curia, the Vatican bureaucracy, now they're going out and they're doing larger consultations on issues. And this is something that famously is expressed in a more profound way in the case of the US bishops' letter on nuclear weapons from 1983. So they went and they talked to experts. They talked to regular folks about what they thought, and they had sort of a public process of drafting a document that then they sign. And that was it's called the Challenge of Peace, that document from 1983. And it was that sort of methodology and making it more public. The bishops have always done that. I've consulted on a couple of things, but then they signed their name to it. Mm-hmm. And they've never really acknowledged that process. And so now in
other words, they're really kind of democratizing, but they don't admit it.
Yeah, or they're using, and that's the danger, right? Is that, a new regime could change that practice because it hasn't been mandated or made explicit. But we can see it in several of Pope Francis's writings, where it's clear that he's consulted particular voices that had perhaps been thought of as marginal before, but now are different framings, like the Cry of the Earth and the Cry of the Poor in Laudato Si from 2015. They're clearly coming from, sort of the grassroots through other national bishops' conferences, etc. So that's really interesting methodologically, and I think you probably know this from being involved in several things, that the more you can consult, the more voices you get active. That tends to produce something that's better and more authentic. And
I don't know. I used to believe that. I don't think I believe anything like that anymore. But that's a whole different conversation. But I'm trying to think in terms of, look, I'm not Catholic. Therefore, my observations are, I've not tested them against a Catholic before. So
okay.
So let me see whether I'm maybe even being offensive in saying.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
That my impression is that if the Catholic doctrine is this, something or other, mm-hmm. Well, that and $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee. It doesn't add much to what actually people do. For example, birth control.
Yep.
I mean, it's if you look at the figures on birth control in the world, as far as I can tell, Catholics do as much birth control as anybody else. And so from, if you take that as evidence, means that authority isn't being very authoritative, right? It's not working. Now, on the other hand, some other things. I think when it comes to abortion, it looks like a statement from the church carries more weight or has more political impact. But and then you see things like the reversals. If one pope contradicts what the previous pope said, well,
Yeah, so I mean, this is the issue of the reception of the teaching, and it's kind of, I mean, I have tenure now, I can say. I think it's a bit of a roll of the dice, right? When it's really nice with Pope Francis and sort of the energy around him and how that's been connected.
Now he's got opponents. I've heard that there are people out to get him who have some influence.
Yeah, and sometimes in part because of the things that he said about peace, and they're worried about that. But it's always I think it's always my personal empathies lie with more democratic forms of decision making, as we were just talking about, and in a full sense of democratic, So it's always a risk to count on like that authoritarian point of view. But one of the things so the relationship if you talk to a moral theologian, the relationship Catholics are meant to have with Catholic social teaching, so this is the teaching of the bishops and the Pope, etc., the Pope being the Bishop of Rome, is that you're supposed to weigh it on different levels, including the level of conscience. So it's something you're supposed to consider before at least you make your decisions. And then when it's...
You mean when you are deciding let's say whether gay sex is all right, or, right. Abortion or any of these other issues that are contentious, you're supposed to use your own judgment to some extent before you obey what you've been told? Is that what you're saying or not?
Yeah, that's what a lot of moral theologians would say, that there's this idea of the primacy of conscience, but you would reflect and pray upon it before you dissented from certain levels of teaching. So the highest level of teaching would be an encyclical like Laudato Si, which you might be familiar with, the encyclical on caring for our common home that got quite a bit of publicity. That's binding on your conscience, so you really have to think about it quite a bit. The Pope just talking to an audience is a different level of authority.
Do they do that officially? Do they say, well, he was just talking off the cuff, therefore it doesn't count, but this one, boy, you better do it or else you're going to hell? Or I mean, is there that kind of spectrum on
you have to take it very
authoritativeness of the teachings?
Yeah, they used to say that people were going to hell, but they've kind of backed away from that particular one. Yeah, so there's a hierarchy in the way so if we concentrate on the Pope, that the Bishop of Rome, who's the Pope, teaches, there's an established hierarchy amongst moral theologians. They would say, so an encyclical they would say the phrase binding on the conscience, whereas it still contains authority, right? If given the Pope and his stature, etc. When the Pope speaks, that used to be the title of how they disseminated Catholic social teaching, is they had a periodical called When the Pope Speaks. They'd send it to all the Catholic universities, etc. Now you can get it off the Vatican website, everything, almost.
Oh, now those are the ones that are the authoritative things, and you better take this seriously.
Encyclical letters. So it's defined in a particular way. It's laid out.
But do they pretend that the encyclicals don't contradict each other, or do they?
Yeah, so they used to say, I haven't heard too much about this, but I remember learning this when I was going through my training that at the undergraduate level. They used to say that the church never errs and it never contradicts itself. Now they kind of just leave it alone, I think, is my general impression, because there is, this is a whole idea of whether you could have development of doctrine and so doctrine being teaching, whether there could be development in that. And I think that we're starting to see that, like Douglas Roche is not afraid to say that there's been a change here. This is breaking new ground. Drew Christensen, they're not afraid to say those things anymore. Whereas maybe that was something that was a little bit, you wouldn't explicitly say in Catholic culture before. And we have seen transformations. There's major issues that are barriers to the Catholic Church becoming a peace church, including the ones that you mentioned about that obviously relate to gender in a full sense, right, in terms of women's rights and LGBTQ plus rights, etc. But on some of these geopolitical issues, on some of the conceptions of peace, I think it's pretty strong, and that opens up conversations, and if those teachings are given on a more authoritative level, then one of the tricks you can do as a Catholic ethicist is you can say, well, now let's apply this principle to dealing with this issue of women's equality within the structures of the church. And it would seem to lead to a different conclusion than the way that Catholic praxis is currently being deployed on the official level. So apply Catholic social teaching to the church and its functioning itself is an interesting exercise.
Okay. Well, to what extent, let's say in your courses, would stuff like that come up where you would say, you would point out what might lead to controversy about women's role in the church or something?
Oh yeah. So when I do issues in contemporary Catholicism, which I'll be teaching again next year, I would go through in religion, not in peace studies, but issues in contemporary Catholicism and religion. We would go through those very hard issues and look at the debate, the controversy, get folks to engage. And those are very powerful classes. When we do women's ordination, we do clerical abuse scandal, plural. So I don't shy away from those things. We're not in religion. We teach all the world religions. I happen to be hired at a Catholic college to also teach about Catholicism, but we always take what we call critical but sympathetic, try to understand where people are coming from, but judge those against competing voices, minority voices, sometimes voices that seem to be calling for peace and justice. You might guess that I'm particularly attracted to those, and to think of how the Catholic institutions, including the churches, including the colleges, don't always incarnate the best of what is true and best and good and peaceful and just, right? And I think that's important to engage those questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gosh, I wish I could be an undergraduate in your course for once. Of course.
Careful what you wish for, but there you go.
Do you now you teach about nonviolence too, and I suppose there you can help bringing in some of the Eastern religions because.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, in fact, the class. So we for historic reasons, our classes in religion and culture, our religious studies program, are divided into area A and B, with area A being Asian Eastern religions and area B being Western religions. And the religions and nonviolence class is mandated to have mostly Asian religion content. So,
you have any Asian, any Hindu teachers, for example?
We do, yeah. So I shared that class with our expert in Hinduism. So we rotate between it. Yeah. So I get to teach it next fall. I'm very excited to do religions and nonviolence again.
Okay. Yeah.
And to show different possibilities. So one of the things that we're planning for this center that we had planned at the departmental level, so it's a joint project between Department of Religion and Culture and the Center for Faith, Reason, Peace, and Justice, is we're having an Islam Peace and Justice conference. Which I'm very excited about. We were going to do it this coming September, but we've delayed it because we had papers from around the world, and travel most likely will not be possible. And we have in Saskatoon, our Islamicist, our Islamic studies specialist, has arranged where the community, the imam from the Sunni community and the imam from the Ahmadi community, who sometimes have conflict, will appear to close the conference on a public synthesis panel with two Muslim feminist scholars.
Wow.
So not only do we have gender balance on our closing panel, that's very exciting. We have two amazing women who engage issues of peace and justice in Islam from a gender literate perspective. And then we have imams from communities in some places that wouldn't even want to be seen publicly together, doing a public event where they're exchanging ideas and meant to be in a dialogical fashion, which I imagine will be the case. but on these hard issues. So I'm very excited about that, and
You know,
something like that happens in Saskatoon because it is a smaller place, I think. Yeah.
right now, I want to see if you can help me explore something, because probably not, because this is absolutely a new idea for me.
Sure.
Is, in Peace Magazine,
Mhm.
we don't have that much about Islam very often at all. And if you gave me the task of putting on a program or a public event even about Islamic theories of peace,
Mhm.
I wouldn't I wouldn't know what to say. I would go talk to Mubarak Awad, because I remember he told in a public speech, he didn't tell me personally, but I think he said once that he tried to set up a peace education kind of program in Palestine. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, he was in Palestine because he's Palestinian Christian, actually, Mubarak Abad. And he wanted to set up a peace thing, and he wanted to have a whole resource center or something on Islamic notions of peace. So he collected all the material he could find, and he couldn't find much of anything. Now, I may be, I hope I am misquoting him in a way, because it's not a pleasant conclusion. But I mean, he wound up becoming very involved with this. Oh Lord, I can't remember names, but this wonderful guy who, now names. Or that's what happens when you get to me 89. You forget names. But he led a very important movement and he was an ally of Gandhi's. It was the same vintage, same era as Gandhi, and I can't think of his name right now. But he was a real Muslim leader and a real pacifist in our best sense of the term.
Yeah.
But that there was not a big literature in Islam. Now, it would be lovely to do get an article for Peace Magazine about Islamic notions of peace theories, and so on. And if your event produces anything interesting along those lines, let me know, because I'd like to pursue that.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas about who has done that kind of work or written about it?
So one of our plenary speaker for that event is actually from Toronto, who's Aziza Kanji, and she's at the Newer Cultural Center in Toronto. And she's an amazing young woman who's academic lawyer, has worked for Al Jazeera, really has a vision of peace in that full sense of a just peace. So she'd be someone to connect with locally for you if she was able. She's very busy, but it is a whole area of study. I mean, I have a whole row of books right on my shelf over here. I do one of my, in Religions and Nonviolence, I do one of the weeks on Islam. Our Islamic specialist will teach to coincide with the conference a graduate seminar for our honors and graduate students on Islam, peace, and justice. Like there are examples, and there's people that have thought about it. The word itself, Islam, is associated with peace. A Muslim is someone who submits to peace. So there's lots, and there's contemporaries of Gandhi, like you said, that we talk about in the class, and there's many present examples of people doing amazing work in this area of faith-inspired peace building from an Islamic perspective. Yeah. So I would invite you or any of your viewers, I guess we'd say, to come to the conference, to participate in the conference.
When and how?
Yeah, so that'll be next. So in two Septembers, we'll have the conference. It'll be on the International Day of Peace. So it's September 20. I think we're doing one day is the International Day of Peace, and then the following day, I think it is. I can send you that information as well. The call for papers is up on the website, and I'm the contact person for that. So if you Googled Islam, Peace, and Justice, St. Thomas More College, you get the call for papers right away.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and Aziza's biography is on the call for papers if you wanted to connect with her.
Mhm. Good. Now, when we talked last, which is a year or so ago,
Mhm.
uh, one of the topics that we got off onto was how your students are social activists, so tend to be out there doing demonstrations and this and that. Um, my experience was when I taught, I was in retrospect, I would say I kind of feel I failed in
Okay.
that I expected that if a person graduated from the University of Toronto with a degree in peace studies, that
Mhm.
they would, maybe not professionally, but at least as a hobby, be a peace activist. And none of them ever did. And I finally concluded that it was something about teaching students at that phase of their lives that the students, when there was a time when my students got very engaged, and that was during the first Gulf War,
Mhm.
when they started these bombing raids and things, and the whole college got mobilized and engaged and so on. And they had big kind of rallies there at the college. And my office, which had an extra room for a Peace Resource Center, became the hub. And all at noontime, there'd be 20 students in there planning their things, which was great because they were doing it. It was their issue. I wasn't in charge. And my feeling is that at that period of life, young people want to do things on their own. And if they're going to organize as peace activists, they're going to do it their way. And bless their hearts, they should. We want to give them, cheer them on, but not try to make them recruit them to our groups. Because when I've tried to recruit young people to any of the organizations that I belong to, it doesn't stick. They may show up for a year or less than a year, and then they move on. They're, doing things else, other things with their lives. And I don't even want to impose an expectation on young people that they should join our groups and be active in our sense of the word.
Mhm.
Because I think if, once in a while, and this has happened a lot more with the climate change issue, young people see it as their issue much more than ours. And very rightly criticize us for being slouchy, not active enough. And so that's great. They have their own groups and their own activities. But when we talked last, you said that I asked you, do you go out in the street and have demonstrations with your students and so on? And you said something like they are the ones asking you to come with them,
Yep.
which my students never did. But I guess maybe the occasion didn't arise. But you were mentioning activism on the issues about mining and other uranium mining. I think was the
Yep.
particularly salient in Saskatchewan, right? To what extent are the students involved in social justice issues? And is mining the main one, or are there other topics that engage them now?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot of, I have a fairly broad understanding of what counts as, peace studies. But anything that's related to like a substantive sense of peace related to justice. So think issues like you're mentioning, like the Fridays for Future is very important here. The divestment is something that's attracted people's connections. Equity issues, racism, in our case, anti-racism work. These are the types of issues, gender equality, and that's been my experience, is that there is stuff like, I'm part of the Saskatoon Peace Coalition, where I'm the youngest person that goes to those meetings, and we've tried to, like you said, we've tried to bring in some students and see if they were interested, but sometimes I think there is a little bit of a generation gap on how to go about these things. Even things like the something that's happened, like the stuff for to commemorate the bombings of Japan. The youth seem to take a very different approach.
How so?
Well, I just, that it'll be more artistic, poetic, etc., coming from outside of the Peace Coalition. But I think when those invitations are made, I think that's in a lot of ways better. Like what you're talking about, your students in your office using the space. So if you can provide some space, and it comes from them, I think that's a good thing. And some of it is electronic activism, especially now. And sometimes the older peace activists shy away from that, and it doesn't seem as concrete to them. But I think as long as they're doing something, it's you can't criticize somebody for trying to try to do different things. And I wonder how effective like some of our strategies are of writing to politicians, of trying to get their ear, etc. Whether that there might be something that bypasses those more formal structures, and then that's going to be the sea change. And ultimately, they would converge, right? If the goal is change on the policy and societal levels, they would ultimately converge. So I don't think it's really too much of a problem. And I'm very happy to use whatever privileges I've accrued if the students want those to try to help.
Okay. All right. Well, good. It sounds like you're off and running. And so you have this center. What will be the nature of the center? Is it a place? Is it a room where people go, or is it a list on some calendar of events?
Well, I mean, it's right now we don't have a dedicated space, but it's a structure right now, and it's a way to focus some of those energies in those three areas of Catholic studies, critical perspectives on social justice and the common good, and peace studies, both, like I was saying, on the academic level and on the community outreach level, and to show that that's a priority for our college. To me, it's something that we were just talking about. What do you do with the privileges you accrue? I think it's something that has certainly the potential and has already started in small ways to make the college more relevant. Doing things like community engaged scholarship, offering our expertise to not just write a journal article that 3 or 4 of us read, but to bring those things out into the community, to help organizations. So we're doing things like offering matchmaking services, not just for talks, but for helping with policy, for different types of engaged scholarship.
Term. What do you mean matchmaking services?
So what I'm hoping will happen.
It's like a dating dating club or something.
That we would be able to offer the expertise. So actually, I want to go back 1 second when you said, the University of Saskatchewan, I've never been there, but there might be some, now we're snowing. I'm just looking out at the buildings. But anyway, that there might be something different. And one of the things that the University of Saskatchewan was supposed to be founded on is that it would be one of the strands of its founding is to talk about it being the People's University. So that the research wouldn't just be ivory tower, but would be for the benefit of the community. I want to take that like a extra step and to say it's research and professional development with the community that's actually transformative and good for the college. So to get rid of these silos and to say, nothing against U of T, but we're never going to be U of T, right? Like that's not what we are. We're not at the center. So stop maybe trying to pretend that we're Oxford, Cambridge, and University of Toronto, and say, what difference can we make in the province that's supporting us? And there are lots of issues here that people who are not, always orienting all their energy towards the centers can maybe transform that, redirect it, and then you have the chance to be in the community. So I think in Toronto it's more rare. I was there on my sabbatical, I think, when we talked maybe. And I think it's maybe more rare because there's so many good people doing so many good things, that where activists can specialize, academics can specialize, journalists can specialize. We have 250,000 people in Saskatoon, 1 million people in the province. That's one of the things, is that there's this expectation and opportunity really to go out and engage with the community. And what I realize is that's actually the best thing for us. So where I'm dogmatic is not in Catholicism, but in this idea that community engagement is mutually enhancing. And that's the type of thing that I want to activate in the center, that my advisory circle is very supportive of, for both students, so that learning can also take place in the community, doesn't have to just take place in the classroom, but also for faculty, and to have that properly acknowledged as a path towards tenure and promotion is important, et cetera. And so you have to change certain structures, but it's something that some people think, oh, exercise is really good for you. I think, community engagement is really, really good for you as an academic.
I'm so glad you made that point, because I agree with you 1000%. And I mean, I've never made that into a cause. In other words, I haven't gone out trying to convince people of this very much, but that's sort of the way I live my life. That as an academic, I did not try to keep any boundaries. In fact, I tried to erase all the boundaries between my role as an academic and my role as an activist. And I believe, for example, it would really help if universities would begin to see their facilities more as places where the public could gather for events that are of public concern, and blur the boundaries more between advocacy, because in certain disciplines, I think, I shouldn't name names, but I think political science is one of those where if you do public policy, you have to be very careful, because advocacy, where you're coming out promoting a particular point of view, et cetera, is almost forbidden, and it's very bad form as an academic to but I just think, personally, most of what we should be doing in terms of research should be with regard to generating the kind of knowledge that's required to do the right kind of advocacy, to advocate in smart decisions and smart policies. So I would say that policy orientation should guide most academic pursuits. Of course, if I were in the math department or something, I wouldn't try to make the case for that. But maybe there are some mathematicians who would. But I think you and I make very good.
That's part of the heritage of Pugwash, right? Is to get the scientists involved, because they also have important cultural capital. Even the pure scientists, right? So. I agree with you. I think that's crucial. I think it's what makes the university relevant, and so that's my dogmatic conviction. And
there's a friend of mine who was president of the American Sociological Association a number of years ago, and he made his presidential address had to do with I can't even think of his name, Michael something. That's one of the name issues that I have to. I'll patch it in when I get a chance. Anyway, he had a typology of kinds of sociologists, and one of them was a public sociologist, and it would be people who do what you and I do, basically. That is public engagement in the community or on policy issues in the role of trying to make a difference.
So we have a term that was present when I came to the college for one of our awards that we call the Scholarship of Community Service. that's drawn. I can get you the reference if you're interested. But that's the idea of using your professional expertise, and then I would add your cultural capital for community work. Now, and then I would add with the community, right, in that mutually enhancing way. And I think that that's the crucial thing. And so you can call it scholarship and community service. It sounds like it's more academic. People feel more comfortable that that's something that's professional and important. But it's just, I just think that that's the right thing to do. I'm utterly convinced that that's the right thing to do. And then the three areas that we have in the center of Catholic studies, critical perspectives on social justice and the common good, and peace studies do share this aspect of critical normativity, right? Where they engage values, they learn to engage values, they try to learn to engage with different people, but still have a telos, right? Something that they're aiming for in each of those cases.
Well, in that context, just as we're about to end, I will end by trying to hook up, associate Project Save the World with what you're doing, because this website and the talks that we're doing right now, and the magazine, the whole operation that we're running here is very much this kind of thing, trying to have a reasonable discussion of various social issues and seeing how they're connected with each other and how they should relate to peace education. So I encourage you to post things on our website and to
with all my extra time, I will.
Yeah, get your students to do it too.
Yeah, no, that's the key, right? Is that you can't take all this on yourself. It's partnerships are so important.
Okay.
Yeah, so my advisory circle has partners from the community as key folks that set, we dialogue and we set the activities for the center together. So that's very exciting.
Okay, this has been very refreshing. I didn't start with a list of questions, but I think we wound up with a pretty good one. A wonderful conversation with you, Chris. Appreciate it. So you have a great day. See ya. Okay. Bye.